welcome to those online. Welcome back to those who participated to the lecture last week. So this week we're going to have Dr. Professor Kim Heungkyu from Ajou University, South Korea. And he's going to talk about the ROK's China policies and its relationship with China. I'll leave you the word.
Okay.
We're going to have 1 hour and a half, and then we're going to do half an hour, 40 minutes of questions from both the public here and the public online. And yeah, please be respectful with the question. What's that?
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity for me to meet you guys here and people who are interested in my topic. Today's topic is about the ROK China policies and its relationship with China in the era of US-China strategy. So I'm going to deal with my understanding of US-China strategy competition, and also this maybe the ROK's China policies and its relationship with China, or maybe we can talk about the prospects for the international security situation of the world. Okay, next. This is my brief bio, and then I didn't have enough time to translate every Korean to English, but I've been advisory board members to the presidential office for 20 years. It's quite long, but no president liked or loved me, and so. But here, my point is this presentation is based upon my personal views. I don't represent any agency of Korean government. This is my point here. Okay, even though I have various positions, and even though I still have some positions there. Okay, thank you. Next time. Today's lecture, this is the summary. The Korean Peninsula has never safely avoided the repression of hegemonic struggles or power transitions between great powers. Korea is a kind of a shattered zone in geopolitics. The main goal of Yoon Suk-yeol's foreign and security policies is to strengthen the South Korea and US alliance. The Yoon government's most serious foreign and security challenges likely come from ROK and China relations. Examining various scenarios in the era of US-China strategy competition, the Yoon government must pursue a strategy of pro-US and harmonious relations with China. This is my 친매거종 in Chinese. South Korea, as a trading country, strongly supports a liberal market and trade system and rule-based international order. South Korea must actively pursue a policy of regional security cooperation and multilateralism and coalition among middle powers. That's why I am here to further our relationship between South Korea and Sweden, and maybe some European countries. This is a new area we have to focus on. So more communication and collaboration with Western European countries, Germany, Sweden in particular, is the critical elements of the South Korea's pursuit of pivotal, global states. Okay, if you understood what I said today, then you may leave right now. So I'm done. Okay, next. This is the geography of South Korea. Can you see? South Korea is a small country, right? The size of China is maybe 95 times larger than South Korea. So we are surrounded by China and Russia and Japan and the United States. Can you imagine how big they are, how powerful they are? And we are small. But the problem is here, South Korea is no longer, well, actually it's not that, weak. South Korea has the, sixth strongest army in the world, six, and then 12th, strong economy in the world, and also the living standard is quite okay, and almost maybe similar to Sweden, I hope. Maybe you are much better, but still. But the problem is South Korea is located in the area surrounded by China, and then Japan and Russia and the United States. So we are destined to be weak. This is our destiny, and then so the miracle is still we survive. You can imagine several thousand years we fought with China and Japan. Even though it is not the exact number of countings, but about 1,000 times we've been invaded by the outside forces throughout history. Can you imagine 1,000? 450 times out of 1,000 times came from the north, which is China, and the northern, Asia. So the others come from the Japan. But most military crashes and invasion from the south was done by a kind of pirates of Japanese and not major forces. So Japan was never been a major threat to Koreans. The most and major threat came from the north. So you can imagine. So we have very special DNAs in our blood on how to deal with China colonies. So based off on the Western social science, international relations, maybe you cannot really figure out how South Koreans, maybe North Koreans behave against China. That has some, historic, legacies in our life and experiences. So this is the new element you have to, consider if you were the kind of specialist in this region and on the Korean Peninsula. Next. These are images of the Korean Peninsula. How would you see? Maybe most of the Western, social science or international relations people may see Korea is like a rabbit. Maybe because it's small compared to the, China and other countries, right? I was born in rabbit year, so this is my year. But it's not necessary to be, a good image of, but this is a kind of image. Maybe some Chinese may think, especially the most prosperous period of the Chinese dynasty is Tang Dynasty, and the most powerful, king or emperor of the Tang Dynasty was Taizong. He invaded Korea. In the most prosperous time in China, but he defeated. And then he left, his last war when he died. Never invade Korea. Don't touch them. So that was why he said, this is what you believe. It means whenever China took the military intervention on the Korean Peninsula, their dynasties, definitely, without exception, was perished as a result or as a consequence of the invasion. So, Korean Peninsula has been always a stony, place for China to their voice. So that's why you can imagine North Korea's behavior in dealing with China. North Korea is a really small country, only 20 million people. The economic capacity is almost zero compared to the size of China. But still you can see their behaviors. Surprisingly, they are taking the kind of self-reliance policies. And they sometimes threat China. And then my Chinese colleagues saying, for one thing, I'm one of the most frequent traveler from China, from South Korea to China, maybe throughout my life, about 300 times I visited China. But I cannot, say I'm a China expert. Here, I do not know many of them. And I'm just familiar with some part of Beijing's policies. And this is the situation because they are too complicated, they're too big and changing rapidly. So always we have kept, eyes on every inch of Chinese media because it is extremely important for the survival of South Korea. But North Koreans are similar. So in this respect, we share certain, ideas on China. Yeah. So many South Korean experts also believe in the era of, strategic competition between the United States and China, North Korea would definitely ally with China. But I do not think so. Okay. Yeah. I do not think so. Instead of allying or strengthening a relationship with China, North Korea took their policies of self-reliance first, and then strengthening their nuclear and missile capabilities, and also utilizing their strategic, maneuvering with China and Russia because of their strategic interests shared. So this is a kind of a tigers, glory against China. And but there is another image of Korea. Yes. What is it? Against what? Japan. Oh yeah, Japan. Because Japan is a great country, right? Really big and powerful and amazing country. But surprisingly, Koreans always, despise Japanese because Japanese pirates invade Korea. They were very small. You can imagine the harsh environment in the past of the islands. So we call them as small guys always. And even we call them small monkeys. That's why, Koreans are so much, frustrated and humiliated because Japan was successful in, conquering or annexing Korea in the early 20th century. So Koreans are tenacious in grabbing Japan's legs and continuously bothering them, hurting their reputation. So this time, Japan made a kind of decision to give them a kind of lesson. But the image of Korea is like, they are, staring at Japan. You small guys. I'm going to revenge. That kind of image. But these days, Korea's image is like this. Many of the young, generations think Koreans are, dancing well, sing a song well, BTS, yeah, and then there are surprisingly cultures, K-pops, very well, and famous in the world. So Koreans in the past, in the ancient, even in the ancient period, are famous for dancing, singing a song, and also shooting arrow. Three capability. Now we are showing our, strengths in the world. So that's why there is a BTS and then also other singers famous. So what kind of images do you have for Koreans? Now, photo maybe missed. So next. So let me briefly introduce the evolution of South Korea-China formal relations. We've been in war after the Korean War, right? And also in the Cold War period. Then we established the formal relationship in 1992. When we established the formal relationship, there was a trade volume was 6 billion, and then personal exchanges, the number is maybe less than 1 million, much less. You can see. Later on, gradually, we developed our relationship, but you can see the speed and the volume of our relationship. It's a kind of a miracle bilateral relationship. You can see the size in just maybe 30 years, right? We realized the how much? Okay, 300 billion trade volume. Now, South Korea is number 2 trading partner with China, just outscored Japan last year. The day before last year, Japan was number 2, South Korea number 3. But last year, South Korea outnumbered Japan in terms of the trade volume. They outscored more higher than $300 billion US dollars, and also 10 million, more than 10 million people are exchanging. This is a kind of crazy, relationship between them. But there's a kind of limitation here. Maybe you are an expert on China. You can figure out what kind of vocabularies they're using. Chinese is very careful in selecting vocabularies in describing something. Okay. So every vocabulary has its own special meaning. So strategic cooperative partnership we achieved in 2007. Strategy means we are going to deal with the third-party issues and also long-term issues. This is the basic implications. So between China and South Korea, from that time on, we handle North Korea issues in our bilateral strategic dialogues. Before that, China refused taking that issue because this is bilateral, issues, but we cannot deal with the third-party issues. So strategic means special meaning for China, and partnership means we don't have fundamental differences, basically, and we are going to work on it together to resolve other small differences. This is the meaning of Chinese partnership. But if you add here one comprehensive, actually China suggested in the period of Park Geun-hye president, why don't you build a kind of a comprehensive strategic corporate partnership? So that at the moment, the relationship between South Korea and China was quite good. So almost everybody just agreed. Why not? We can elevate our relationship with China to the other level. You see, European, countries also has this kind of comprehensive strategic corporate partnership, I think. But I strongly objected to embrace that kind of because in my understanding, comprehensive means including military issues together. So we are not ready to, accept this kind of relationship because we face the North Korean, threat, and also we are in alliance with the United States. So there is much more areas we have to handle later. So that's why you can see carefully, there is no comprehensive, but execution of strategic cooperative partnership and realization of strategic cooperative partnership. So even though we changed some vocabularies, but still we describe the bilateral relationship in a quite different way, which China want more, maybe. But anyway, this is the situation. So you can see there. You may see the kind of miracle of bilateral relationship between these two countries, but certain limitation in the relationship. So this is a kind of source of our tension, and also some apprehension and maybe potential conflicts in the future. Next. So there are several, factors, influencing the South Korea and China relations. The foremost important factor is US-China relations. So if you look at carefully the bilateral relationship between South Korea and China, it is, very positively related to the relationship with the relationship between US and China relations. If it is positive, South Korea-China relationship is also positive. If it is getting deteriorated, South Korea and China relationship also getting deteriorated. That's the kind of metrics. So second is the transformation of economic relations. Previously from complementary relationship to currently to the competitive relationship, as illustrated in the metrics of the table above, and then I'm going to show you that later. Without dramatic concession from China, South Korea would choose the United States as an alliance. So domestic politics. From progressive government, Moon Jae-in governments, now to the conservative Yoon Suk-yeol governments, influenced also the China process tremendously. Past experience with China brings national memories of threat, humiliation, frustration, and the rejection rather than friendship, pride, and inclusion. You can imagine. Of course, we were influenced by the China and in the past so much, and we got the tremendous benefits in the relationship between China and then the Korea, because China was center of civilization, center of power in the region. So, as I mentioned, we fought Chinese over northern, nations 450 times, and maybe I may say it is not statistically. I'm not sure, but maybe Koreans are the nation who killed China most in the world, and then Korean nations who defeated Chinese in a major war the most, because others are perished already. There are only few nations survived adjacent to China. So this is the kind of situation. So U.S. scholars always question how it was possible for the Korean people to survive near China, okay, adjacent to China. Okay, so we're gonna figure it out. And then South Korean's public opinion on China, which is at this worse now, and it's very similar to the that of Swedish people. I see the public polls of Swedish people. The weight against China is really maybe one of the top in the world, right? I'm trying to figure out why. Yeah. So, but I can say South Korea's the public opinion on China is quite similar to that of Sweden. According to the Pew Research polls, more than 80% of South Koreans have unfavorable views of China, which is one of the highest percentage in the world. And the last three, the resilience of supply chains. South Korea is a trading country, depending upon trade for 60 to 70% of its GDP, now almost maybe higher 70%. Okay, imports of more than 80% of 1,850 products, items rely upon China. This is the situation. We try to get out of the heavy dependence on China, but it failed. And also we found it's impossible. So that's the situation. So China in turn heavily depends on South Korea for the supply of semiconductors, which are vital for the fourth industrial revolution. However, it is unclear how long China's dependence on South Korea will last. Now that the transition to a new generations are underway in semiconductors. So this is the what we face. So we are looking for some friends in Europe. How do we establish a kind of a new supply chain, working together, and then while reducing our reliance on China. Next. Then let me explain what variables explain South Korea's China policies. The most important, as I said, US-China strategic competition now. Second one is changing bilateral economic relations. Third one is domestic politics. Next. Next. So the world is now competing with different regions. The United States, two camp views. The world is divided into two, bifurcated, democracy versus authoritarian. This is the view. So we come together, fight against the authoritarian regimes. This is the appeal of the US President Biden's. Well, Chinese view is quite different. The world is divided into three. That means US-centered countries, China-centered countries, and middle giants. It is quite similar to the Chinese middle giant theory in the 1960s. The European countries belongs to the middle giants. So this is the kind of competing area between the US and China for influence. So then Russia's four spheres of influence. Surprisingly, Russia popping up, when we found in the Ukraine war. And then, no, the world is not composed of, three giants or two, giants, but we are here. There is a kind of Russian, influence of sphere of influence. So revival of a kind of traditional geopolitics, United States, China, Russia, and Western Europe. So this is what the Russians see in the world. Then in the future, we are not sure what kind of world we are going to have. Bifurcated strategic competition continued, or complex multi-polarization, or G0 world. Nobody is responsible for the public goods in the world. So this is a kind of area of uncertainty and also instability. Next. Let me talk about the Biden administration's China policies briefly. Trump just focused on pressures, and then he almost entered the kind of new Cold War. So he denied Chinese, socialist system, and he denied kind of the authority of Xi Jinping. So some of them just called Xi Jinping not president, but just party secretary in the United States. But the problem is the US government failed handling China appropriately. So failed achieving its goals. the trade volume surprisingly increased, and the U.S. dependence on China increased in spite of Trump's harsh policies against China. And Biden's people, and including maybe President Biden, recognize that's not the strategy to handle China. We need much longer and sophisticated strategies to handle China, like putting a kind of Oriental chess game, Weiqi. Okay, we call it Tado. Westerners are very familiar with the kind of chess games. It's straightforwardly, directly against the enemy's, head or leaders. Very straightforward and fighting hard. But Oriental way is not in that way. Anyway, we have to occupy some place in advance, and then gradually being a majority, and then take the whole eventually. So it's a kind of long game, and also indirect ways. So Chinese are very familiar with that kind of strategies. So I think Biden administration quickly recognized also we need the kind of Oriental style of strategy games with China. So Biden chose US version of Oriental chess game strategies, long-term and strategic realignments, and also strategic competition with restrained cooperation and management of crisis. So it is not just pushing the US and their allies fight against China, but realignments, especially in the area of economy and science and technologies. It's a long game. So a main battleground in 3 areas: digital economy and infrastructure investment and supply chain realignments. So these are areas we have to focus, and we have to find a way out, how to cooperate each other, how to realign in the world. Next, China's strategies. China, I think in 2020s, in Politburo meetings, they officially recognized it is a kind of long-term protracted warfare against the United States. And also, in the 19 in the Central Party school speech, Xi Jinping mentioned the Mao's guerrilla warfare strategies we have taught that. Okay, maybe some of you are familiar with the Mao Zedong's guerrilla warfare strategies. When you find a nice guy or nice lady, you better adopt this kind of guerrilla warfare strategy. It's very useful. You know how? Always around her or him, always. If she or he show interest in you, don't be approached. Getting a little bit away, but still let she know I'm here. And then change the environment first in your favor. Okay, if you think the time is right, and then you can approach and change the whole, So this is the guerrilla warfare strategy. So important is it's a long game, and also environments are important. And don't be hasty, but always let your enemies or let your lovers know I am here. Okay, this is the kind of game. And also you learn the Chinese traditional war fighting strategy, Sun Tzu. Okay, utilizing military means is not the best way. Before using or without using military means, you have to make your enemy succumb. This is the best strategy. So this is the exact strategy China is trying to do actually against the United States. And also Xi Jinping saying their scientific materialism, their ideas. Scientific means based on not just adventurism. They suffered enormously in the period of Mao Zedong, taking the adventurism. So these leadership of China has grown up in the kind of costs or the kind of tragedies of Mao's taking adventurism. So they will focus on the base, economic relationship, economic structures. They are going to be in majority and they are going to be dominant in those areas first. Then these base will change the superstructures much easier. Okay, then you can imagine what Chinese leaders think about world change. So there are tools, One Belt, One Road initiatives as a global strategies, and also inward-oriented two circular economic strategies means first focusing on your own, economies, strengthen your, internal balancing capabilities. Also in the, foreign policies, as I mentioned, middle series, and then also they are also showing their kind of soft powers now. In the previous years, they show a kind of wolf warrior, that kind of diplomacy. So you abominate, you hating Chinese behaviors, right? And Xi Jinping, solemnly, admonished their, foreign policy programs. We should not take this strategy. So now they're changing their behaviors, much charming. They're smiling at us these days. Yeah, they're smiling because they understood the soft power, the importance of common destiny series and the global development initiatives. So these are the new tools. Okay, next. So when I analyzed Chinese, Party Congress report, this is my conclusion. Chinese foreign policies in the third term of Xi Jinping on October 23rd, the third term of Xi Jinping as a leader of the Chinese Communist Party was officially launched at the first plenary session of the 20th century CCP. The party completely broke away from the framework of the collective leadership and then concentrate power in the hands of Xi Jinping. Another notable point is that the ideological elements have become rampant in Chinese foreign policy and the domestic policies as well. A careful analysis of the Chinese Party report shows China's foreign strategy is inherently defensive. Contrary to the perception of the West, a review of Xi Jinping's recent speeches to Chinese key apparatus reveals China will focus on the maintaining prudence and caution, like a person taking civil service examination in the past. So you can see the Chinese vocabulary. He frequently uses the two vocabularies, 清醒 and 谨慎, means prudence and caution and alertness. So this is a kind of psychological, situation of Xi Jinping. So I think the CCP report makes clear it does not want a new Cold War, adhering to the path of peaceful development. At the same time, the report referred to the People's War and limited warfare strategies. The rhetoric of these strategies is radical and aggressive, but in reality, it presupposes China's inferiority. So these strategies are used by Mao. He always, saying to the outside world, we are not afraid of waging even nuclear warfare. But actually, if you look at carefully strategies, it was inward-looking strategies, defend in the main, not going out. So this is the basic, assumption. The rhetoric of this strategy is radical, but in reality presupposes China's inferiority in capacity and doesn't suppose an all-out war with great powers for the time being. Next. Then China believes the world is moving toward a multipolar system. In Xi Jinping's third term, China will continue to oppose the United States and the West-centered world order, insist on the importance of a multipolar order in line with supporting the UN system. China divides the world into three, ways. First one is world order, which is centered by US and Western powers. They try to remove this, they try to challenge that system. Second order is the so-called international order, which is based on the UN system. China will try to utilize the kind of system. And then also maybe change some rules and norms within the system and taking the majority in the UN. Third one is global order, which is new security issues, which China are willing to cooperate with the other countries. So based on these vision of views, and then China will take the different strategies. So anyway, while further pursuing the existing global strategy of one belt, one road, China will continue to build a global network of aligned countries. For the time being, China will intensify competition for the sphere of influence in areas of the middle region, Eurasia and Southeast Asia, and also probably Northeast Asia. So China is doing very well with South Korea basically these days, and then even to Japanese, they show their smiling face. Because if you look at the history of Chinese foreign policy, whenever China faced the difficulties with great powers, they are doing good with the neighboring countries. They focus on neighboring diplomacies. So this is the time for China, Xi Jinping, and focus on the neighboring countries. So of course, these statements do not necessarily imply Chinese foreign and security policy is peaceful and passive. Because the most crucial thing for Xi Jinping and the CCP would be the authority and legitimacy of the governing China. So whenever they feel it hurts, and then they're going to be very aggressive. And also, as I mentioned, they never stop. They are trying to change the world gradually in their calculation. So based on there are strategic competition, and then there are 4 fresh points in East Asia between the US and China. First one is, as you know, Southern Sea of China, and then there is Taiwan Strait. Okay, then Eastern Sea of China, and which is related to the Senkaku, or in Chinese Diaoyidao Island dispute, and there is a hidden place that's we call Iyado, Scotra Rock, or in Chinese Suyanjiao. Okay, this is a kind of rock below the surface of the sea, 5 or 10 meters. But this location is here, So and 2 kilometers. So if a country is in control of this rock under the sea, they are going to control the whole sea of Northeast Asia. So that's why here there is we call Dokdo and Takeshima. This is a source of a conflict between South Korea and Japan. It's quite similar situations. When Japan occupied the Dokdo, the small island, it's in the middle of competition between Great Britain and Japan and Russia over Northeast Asia. This is the kind of island to take a kind of observation on every Russian's Navy's move. So this is a very strategic post. That's why Japan occupied that. And in the middle of, or after the World War II, the United States tried to have a demarcation of territories. The United States left the Dokdo as a kind of vacant. Why? Because at that moment, it was during the war, of Korean War. United States, I think they are afraid of being occupied by the communist powers. Then Doctor is gonna be the key strategic post to check the communist move. That's why they're left behind. So it becomes also a kind of a conflict between the South Korea and Japan. But the more serious one is Indo-Pacific. So even though nobody is recognizing or trying to say something, but there is a kind of ongoing war around this. Then both scenarios of the US-China relations in the future. See, there's security area, economic areas. If there is confrontation and cooperation, And before Trump, there was a restrained competition, but more cooperations. The United States believe we can change China, according to the Chinese economic developments, naturally. So China is gonna change to the kind of liberal, state, but it failed. Okay, so the condition was a strong US and the rising China. But in the Trump year, it was a kind of new Cold War, very strong US and strong China. They crashed each other, and they were very ambitious and then very strong. Then Biden year, strategic competition, restrained cooperations, declining the US influence, and also still rising China. And so conflicts and partial decouplings, continuing going on. But next, what is gonna be the international order after Biden? Okay, this is the question. This is the key, a question we have to answer. So I'm afraid of the co-evolution between the US and China over chaotic situations. The problem is China would not stop. But the problem is coming from the US domestic politics. Who is gonna win in the 2024 presidential election? US in the United States, protectionism and nationalism growing fast. And as far as I understand, in the United States, there is a limited space for taking care of other countries. So this is a kind of problem. So when I stay in the United States as a visiting fellow, right just before I come to Sweden, I've been in Washington, D.C. as a visiting fellow at George Washington University. And whenever I had a kind of a conference or meeting or, my American colleagues ask me, and then also why South Korea and other, countries are taking hedging strategies, except choosing the United States. So my answer was, the problem is we are trying to choose you. You really want. But the problem is the United States only choose only the United States. That's the problem. That's my answer. So, we have to build a kind of, trust, the level of trust. This is the situation. So anyway, if US and China, maybe also other countries, to try to find a way out of this kind of strategic competition, and we are gonna see the co-evolution of new international order. And this is what I and then we South Korea want. And then otherwise it's gonna be chaotic. So we have to prepare for this, two different scenarios. So for co-evolutions, I think cooperation between South Korea and the European countries critical. European countries are tremendously important in deciding the future of international order. This is what I think. So that's your responsibility, not me. Anyhow, okay, next. So anyway, for the South Koreans, perspective, we have to prepare for all kinds of scenarios ahead of us. and changing orientations of bilateral economic relations. I'm gonna go fast. Okay, next. And then you can see South Korea's the dependence on trade with China is growing fast, but starting here and then slightly. But we really want how to reduce the trade dependence on China. But as you see, it's a slight decrease. And also, if you add the proportion of Hong Kong, and then it rose to 30% of South Korea's trade dependence with China. And but remember, South Korea is a trading country whose trade dependence is their volume is almost 70% or higher of this GDP. So if you multiply 70 over 30, and then how big Chinese portion is, so you can imagine to the influence of South Korea's lives. South Korea's main the export items is semiconductors. This is almost 40%. But if you include the proportion of Hong Kong's and another, and it grows almost 60%. So most of South Korea's produced the semiconductors, sell to China. Maybe it's very similar, to that of similar of the Taiwan's, right? Right. So U.S. market is not as big, as large as the China's. That's the problem. But the United States now asking us to decouple from China. So next. Then South Korea's rare earth dependence on China is serious. You can see the magnesiums 94.3, graphite 87.5, and tungsten 70.2. This is a very important rare earth in developing your battery industries, and also the other, But no country in the world cannot escape from depending upon China on the rare earths. That's the problem. I know. Recently, Sweden found a great amount of rare earths, but how to develop? When? Okay, what kind of techniques you have, technologies you have. So this is what we faced in the world these days. Even though the United States is asking us to only use, U.S. produced work, but no way. How to resolve these issues? What kind of rules and also the principles we are going to have in the future? Now, changes on trade relationship between China and trade balance with China is decreasing since 2018, and also for the first time in the history of China and South Korea, the trading relationship, South Korea got their deficit in trade last year. Maybe it continues. No way to recover. So this is the serious situation for South Korea to face. So our relationship in the economy was a kind of complementary in the past. So if China grows, South Korea's economy grows, because we provide a kind of middle level of items and also the technologies, and quite easy. Kind of transaction cost was quite low, because South Korea is very close to China, metrically. But now, South Korea is losing competitiveness in manufacturing over China. So what we have is semiconductors. It's the only one, and people. But we are seeing number is very small, group of people here. And okay, next. So we are losing the ground, and then facing the kind of competitiveness. Okay, next. So if you look at evolution of ROC-China relations, you can see there is an external relationship when Sino-US relationship was good, and then our relationship was good. And then what is saying our relationship in terms of supply chains, South Korea became much more competitive with China instead of complementary. I'm gonna leave this PPT here, so you may see. Ask her to provide the PPT because of time constraint. I cannot explain all of this, but this is what I really worked hard to make. So anyway, okay, next. Domestic politics oriented, US-China domestic factors really matters these days. That causes tremendous problems in foreign policies. Foreign policy has its own laws, but these days domestic politics is quite dominant in shaping their foreign policies. So the United States is increasingly inclined toward protectionism and nationalism. And the top priority of Chinese leadership is to maintain their power and to elevate CCP's authority, which is quite different, calculation from Western democratic countries. So how much and earnestly can China provide public goods in the region and then in the world? This is the key question. China's series of common destiny of human beings and global development initiative are not enough, and thus China still need to fully digest the horizontal relationship of the current sovereignty state system, although China accepted it rhetorically, but their behavior could not be more consistent. And so there is a significant gap and conflict between perception and behavior. This is the problems. China should be able to present new alternatives and visions to the world instead of by China, of China, for China. Next. But here, this is the kind of very interesting situation we South Korea have. And there is a European see China as the world dominant economic powers in the future. So you can see, even this is a research poll in 2021, okay? And Sweden, 47% will believe China will be much more dominant in the future in economy. Okay? Do you agree? No? Yes? Oh, many of you, yes. Okay. Surprisingly, all of European countries agree with this, statement. But there is one stupid country, South Korea, strongly believe 77% United States is going to be dominant in the future. So I, call South Koreans characters in 5S. Stubborn, and then simple, speedy, and straightforward, and stupid. So, this is the kind of the examples. See, only South Korea and probably Japan also, but you can see the percentage. 77% people still believe the United States would lead the world in the future. Next. More for the favorable views of the United States than of China. Who favors United States? Oh, we favor our own nation, 76%, right? Okay. Then other countries, yes, all of them. Sweden, where is, okay, 57, maybe today, maybe much higher, favorable to the United States, right? I guess. But see, South Korea, 77%. They believe in the United States more than United States believe in, American people believe in their own countries. Can you see? So this is the kind of outcome of public poll. So South Koreans are crazy, ally with the United States, and they love the United States. Why? That's the question. Okay, next. So South Korea's Yoon Sung-yeol's foreign policies in Indo-Pacific Strategy is just coming out in last December. So a conservative government, the Yoon government, is very strong in favor of strengthening the US alliance naturally it represents the public policy, the orientations. Maybe I can say Yoon government is probably the most pro-US positions in the history of South Korea. Okay, and then they also, show their own, principles of foreign policies as a pivotal global state and contributing to freedom, peace, prosperity in the world. And also, according to this Indo-Pacific Strategy report, and then, there are 3 visions and principles, 3 principles, and then 9 key tasks. There is a kind of building NATO on economic security, which I focus on these days. I'm working hard and to establish a kind of global networks together. Okay, anyway, and then the US as an ally, China as not an enemy, but a kind of subject of cooperation. This is a kind of declaratory policies, but in reality, operational policies are quite different. And then, they are carefully, checking China as a kind of a future threat. Okay, so rebuilding their whole formation of foreign policies. So next. South Korea's choice and allocate China's relations anticipate. Okay, next. Severe South Korea's diplomatic and security situations getting worsening, and the UK image, as I mentioned, world's largest arms race here. See, United States, Russia, China, Japan, South Korea. There's number 1, number 2, number 3, number 5, number 6. Strong countries in the army. And then number of North Korean nuclear arsenals. Now we assume the 20 to 60, but by 2027, they're reaching 100 and threatening to use, like Putin, threatening the other, the rest of the world, using their military, preemptively, maybe. Okay, then the world largest economy powers gathering also, and but there are, abundant the territory disputes interwoven in these areas. So I can say geographically shattered zone is Taiwan Strait and Korean Peninsula. This is, Brzezinski actually, point out 5 shattered zones in the world. Okay, there are 2 among the 5 here in this Northeast Asia. Okay, so every country is trying to adopt a kind of self-help, policies, intensify. Then where is the public goods? Where is the leadership to handle the problems we face? Next. Okay, so international order at the crossroads. So everywhere there are in conflicts, and then also uncertainties increasing. Okay, next. So there is very interesting, report from the New York Times last, year. International trade relationship with Russia after Russo-Ukraine war. Okay, according to the New York Times, can you see? There are 4 countries abiding by the US, request to place sanction against Russia. Is number 1 country is United Kingdom, minus 79%. Sweden is number 2. Wow, this is amazing. And then United States and South Korea. These 4 countries are quite loyal to US request. But United States, only 3 countries. So Sweden and South Korea is getting along with a while. Okay, and but I can say to but you see, China plus 64%. Wow, taking the opportunity. Okay, chance. India 310 times. Turkey, Spain, even Belgium. Can you see? On the contrary, they increased the trade volume with Russia. And more surprisingly, Germany, Japan, maybe Spain, these countries still, maintain a kind of status quo. So I can, separate this word into the three countries for favoring status quo and anti-status quo and opportunists. So where you belong to, we are in the same, stupid and stubborn. Do you agree? Okay, go ahead. More complex world than anticipated. According to the New York Times, as I mentioned, there are three, different divisions. South Korea, along with the United Kingdom and Sweden, is supporting the United States strongly. We may face a kind of a Z0 world where no country would lead the world, chaos, and the new norms and rules are required. But the question is, who will put the bell around that neck? So South Korea is willing to, but we don't have any experience. And we don't have that such a respect gap from the world, maybe. So I see the, countries in the, they have experience. They have a kind of accumulated, experience and knowledge, maybe, to build a kind of new international order in this kind of system. We are not going to choose just simply in between the US and China. This is not the world we are anticipating, just separating and then fighting each other. So we have to establish a kind of new international order, which pay certain respect to the middle powers and small countries as well, and also taking care of the global issues as well. Kind of rule-based international order. Who is going to take the that responsibility? Who is going to take the kind of responsibility of putting the bell on a negative? I hope Sweden take the kind of responsibility. Can you? Yes? Maybe. Next. So I calculate the consequences of choice leaning toward either the United States or China for these issues. And politics, diplomacy, security, and science and technology and values, pro-China, pro-US. Then you can see that every choice in foreign policies has its own benefits and costs, even though how good the choice is, right? So I calculate in the way. And then if we took pro-China, there are so much troubles we face. We cannot resolve. So with the United States, maybe some troubles, but still we can maintain the current situation, maybe anticipate something good, better in the future. But the problem is, as I mentioned, the orientation of US domestic politics, very heading forward. Protectionism, nationalism is growing so fast and strong in the United States. If United States took the kind of isolationist kind of strategies, like in the 19th century and the early 20th century, and what kind of consequences we face? This is the we question these days. Okay, so strengthening our collaboration and communication between middle powers are very important. China, they matters the majority. They are not just simply barbarians. They calculate. They pay respect to the majority. And also the United States. They have almost everything. So sometimes they try to retreat, just take care of their own people. But the problem is remain in the rest of the world. So how can we go together? Even including China. So this is the question: who is going to take the responsibility of putting the bell on the callous neck? Next. So my conclusion is the US-China strategic competition is likely to intensify, as we anticipate. Both the United States and China are key nations. South Korea is overly optimistic about the outcome and process. South Korea has become a strategic linchpin for the United States, China, for the time being, and will be under intense pressure The foreign policy of the Xi Jinping's third term is expected to intensify pressure on neighboring countries. As a country to be a global pivotal state, South Korea announced this Indo-Pacific strategies in December 2022, getting closer to China. And at us with the United States is an unacceptable option at this moment in the short and mid-term. More than confidence in China is needed to build a better relationship for South Korea's perspective. Nevertheless, while constructing various scenarios, it is necessary to carefully manage the South Korea-China relations so that it does not become extreme. And although a certain degree of strategic distance from China is inevitable for South Korea as a natural ally of the United States, it should also have room for the conditional piggyback strategy with China as a middle power. This is my recommendation to Korean government, but I don't think the Yoon Suk-yeol government would listen to me. So here I feel frustrated. Anyway, next. This is what I learned here. Sorry. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions from any of you?
I have two questions. You mentioned the strength of South Korea in military terms in the world. So my question is, who has made that assessment and on what basis? That's my first question. And the other one is, you mentioned that North Korea is pursuing a policy of balance between China and Russia, perhaps comparable to what we did between China and the Soviet Union. But it's said that, for instance, 90% of trade is conducted with China. And the Russian economy is smaller, I believe it's smaller than South Korea's. So how does this policy actually work? These are my two questions.
First one is, I'm not sure exactly which, but I guess CP or IIS, maybe they accumulate the kind of quantity first, and then with the kind of some part of quality, issues. But this is quite a prominent institution. It calculates. So I can send you the source. This is the first one, and then but this is only announced and then publicized documents, so it's easy to get. And then second one is Russia and China are quite different, right? And then in the Soviet Union period, they are quite dominant in their circle, and then also all kinds of trade relationship was amassed with the Soviet Union in the socialist camps, and the US camps they focus. But now China is quite different. So this is a world of a kind of global kind of liberal trade system. So it's extremely difficult to decouple from China, even the United States. And so so it is. I think it is unfair to just simply compare with the Soviet Union and then China cases, and now Russia and then China cases. I do not think most of Americans think Russia is a major threat because of their small size and its capacity, but their military capabilities. But all of the US parties see that China as a major competitor in the future. Okay, so they try to focus on the China strategies in the future, but the problem is how to get out of Ukraine and the Russia war. The Democratic parties and Republican parties, their views are quite different. And but it is generally known as Republican Party to be much more, friendly with Russia. And then they want to get out of, maybe, probably, the Ukraine-Russia war with a certain compromise to focus on China. So this is what some people ask or question. Okay, and but what way? And also there is a kind of calculations among strategists in the United States. I think how to reformulate the word. And so this is what we are afraid, because maybe United States have draw a kind of line and then much more protective and then isolated and then nationalistic. Then what the rest of the world is going to handle this kind of situations, and then it will kind of influence over the outcome of the Ukraine-Russia war, which is extremely important in shaping the future world, right? And then also we carefully watch the European countries' solidarity. So fortunately, this winter was warm. I pray for God, please warm. If it is a kind of freezing weather, and it's much more difficult the Western countries will face. So that's why I recommend the Korean government don't publish the Indo-Pacific strategies before this spring comes. First, look at the Western countries' behaviors, their choices. This is much wiser. But Yoon Suk-yeol government was a little bit hasty, and then saying people and the world, and we are kind of stubborn and then determined, okay, supporting the United States, something like that, and then but still careful, and not trying to in conflict with China. This is the kind of outcome of a kind of compromise. But anyway, so the Russia-China relationship, we thought it as such a simple ally, but I don't think so. They have different calculations. As I mentioned, they see the world differently. So that kind of different calculations influence their foreign policies. So you see, China was every people just simply thought China was a natural ally with the Russia, and but China is taking their own strategies now. The best strategy for China is to fight Russia and between the Russia and the other Western powers, including the United States. You just each other. Then China is naturally becomes superpower as the United States becomes superpower after the World War II, because all the other countries are almost adjusted. So I think China is taking that strategy, and so they don't want to give the simply the Russia kind of present. So this is the kind of a difference. So we have to see the individual countries' strategy calculations carefully. So we need a kind of experts on regions and experts on Korea and experts on China. Without understanding the kind of calculations of each country choose, and it's extremely difficult to take a kind of your own foreign policies. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Questions. Yeah.
Yes, I also have two questions. The first one, you were describing 4 flashpoints in the East, China Sea in the South. I didn't quite understand the one up by South Korea. Is that an island? I mean,
no, it's a rock under the sea, 5 and 10 minutes below the sea, but it's the location is very critical, and also the width is 2 kilometers. So it's easy to build the kind of radar, facilities or missile facilities in modern, technologies. So
it's in the sea. It's not an island, but it's very shallow.
Yeah, right. Very shallow. Okay. Very shallow and quite long. And then the location is in between the Yellow Sea of China and then Korean Strait, and then Korean East Sea and Japan Sea. So if you take the rock, and then you're gonna control the whole Northeast Asia in the sea.
Is it within the South Korean territorial?
No, South Korea, China, and Japan claim it's within there. But there is a stupid country, as I mentioned. South Korea almost 20 years ago just established a kind of facilities for scientific research. China was so infuriated. So every year they send their worship there and circulating and saying and just leaving the kind of evidence we are carrying on. But South Korea every year, every season, just be there and do kind of scientific research. So this is a very interesting story.
Then I saw those images of Korea. You had the tiger and I understand year of the rabbit. You must be 36 years old. No, but that was the question.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I love it. Okay.
No, but I saw you were covering both North and South Korea, right? With the tiger and everything. So if you imagine a future unified North and South Korea, what do you think what would China's attitude be to that if, say, North and South agree that they have a plan to unify?
It's going to be very tough because, as I mentioned, Korean people, in some sense, quite thorny in Chinese perspective. They are strong, and then also they're, if you look at the history of ancient Korea, and so many Chinese generals, and also there are some people in the dynasty just flee from the China to Korea after being defeated by the current emperor dynasties. So there are emotions, and also there are some characteristics. Of course, Swedish men are so handsome and tall and thin and strong, but generally speaking, in Northeast Asia, Korean people are generally speaking poor and thin and strong, and so they're always tough on China in fight. So in the ancient period, there's so many wars between Korea and China, and we defeat them so many times, kill them so many. But what we found, there are too many. So it's much better not to fight, live with China peacefully. And then as long as China doesn't want to just intervene in our domestic politics, and we just show the kind of respect. That's the kind of condition to be peaceful later on. So that's the image, most Westerners, so. But in the previous years, there was a furious, war fights between these two nations. So China is afraid.
So they will do anything to work against the unified.
I do not think they hope or they will have two Koreas unified. There's just one condition. They must be pro-China. Yeah. And against Japan, against the United States. Then it's going to be acceptable. But it's almost impossible. And then also as I mentioned, the South Koreans, the public hope is against China, and also we don't have that kind of trust because the memories and experience with China is not necessarily be happy, between the great power and the small countries, and fighting so hard 450 times in the world occurred. And so always, in our DNA, always carefully watch China's future. So sometimes my Japanese friend, toured the world, and then also in the United States. South Korea is so small, and then close to China, and heavily dependent on China. So they are going to be in the future in the circular Chinese orbit. And but when I made a speech in their defense ministry's institute, and I told them, I'm not afraid of South Korea's the future policy orientations because we are stupid, we are simple and straightforward. But you are very complicated, and you are very keen to the change of international system. And so Japan always allied with the most powerful countries in the world. You see Netherlands, and then next the Great Britain, and then Germany, and then now United States. So what I'm afraid is in maybe 10 or 20 years later, you ally with China, and we are just isolated. This is what I'm afraid. So this is that was my reply, and so it means still we need to communicate each other well, understand each other, and then figure out what is the most important for your national security and the lives of your people, and maybe also the people in the region, in the world, together, live together. How to find a way. So even including Chinese, because we cannot simply exclude the 1.4 billion people out of our world. Then it's going to be crazy. So this is the question is hard to solve. So who is going to lead the kind of responsibility and placing the test net? Okay.
So you mentioned how China has quite a defensive attitude on foreign politics or foreign policy. I wonder how you interpret U.S. officials' predictions that a Chinese invasion of Taiwan is inevitable, will probably occur by the end of this decade, considering this inherent defensive foreign policy, even though I know China interprets Taiwan as domestic politics.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, a invasion of Taiwan would result in a major power between China and the US.
Okay, this is a very hot questions in the world right now, right? And then as in my personal view, I don't think China will invade Taiwan in this decade. Because as I mentioned in this political report, they recognize the inferior situation in military and also other situations. So they are going to be very cautious. But Chinese PLA has enough reasons to show their willingness and also their readiness to fight, because it is related to their reputation and then also financing. And then, but you can imagine if you try to make a war against the United States, you're gonna be killed all of them almost. Do you want? And then for the United navies, armies, the same situations. United States fight very hard, in the Afghanistan. The small countries, few people, but you see now the outcomes. But imagine you're gonna make a war against China, 1.4 billion. How to conquer? How to deal with this kind of issues? Anyway, even though you have victories against China, and you're gonna die all of them almost. So it's a nightmare for both armies, and both are not ready to fight in such a war, because don't believe Chinese leadership is stupid. They calculate carefully. But the problem is what we worry about is the kind of interactions, and also their, as I mentioned, the Chinese leadership care for their leadership, their authority, their reputation in the domestic. Yeah. So when they already declare something, and then they have to abide by. So, but the issue is the outside world also calculate the Chinese the kind of responses and then utilize the kind of. So elevating their interests while raising the issues or scheming in China. And so, but if you are wise enough and also calculate enough about their capabilities and the situations, and then there are also their willingness. And I do not think there was one within this decade. Nobody is confident of the outcome of them. So they're going to utilize the issue in their political favor, and then to furthering their interest in the international relations. Don't worry too much. This is my recommendation, but still you have to think about the trends, the interests, configurations in nature there. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So do you think that the increased interaction between North Korea and Russia would influence the relationship to South Korea or China?
I think I'm not pro North Korea, but North Korea is smart enough and calculate that kind of. So North Korea is a very good, group of people, experts. I mean, dealing with this kind of international issues, and maybe most, intelligent people are working there for a long time. So. When they handled the China, I was sometimes very much surprised by their using accurate terms which China really loves to listen. They are very good at it. And also they survived in the middle of Cold War and then also the after Cold War. So they are very good at going into the having a wedge and then in the cleavages, and also utilizing some people to make influence over the other. They're very good at maneuvering. But as I mentioned, in the Kim Jong-il era, especially in the era of US-China strategy competitions, North Korea's main three pillars of their foreign policies: first, self-reliance, never believe great power, including China and Russia. They fully understood the harsh attitude of Russians to the other nations. They experienced in the right after the World War II. Russia occupied the North Korea at the moment, and also they are quite aware of the Russians also their maybe behaviors, and so basically they don't trust in any great power. So self-reliance is the most important. That's why the missile and nuclear capabilities the most important for them to keep. So I do not think they are gonna give up their nuclear and missile capabilities. That's why I was in the government of Moon Jae-in's and making foreign policies as one of three participants in making foreign policies. There was three arguments I made. First, US-China strategy competition is coming close, and then the degree and then the intensity would be much more than we anticipate. We have to. As a result, North Korea would not give up their nuclear weapons. So we have to prepare how to deal with nuclear North Korea military. So that's why we should not give up the relationship with Japan. We have to improve the relationship with Japan. This is very important. But of course, as I mentioned, almost all Korean presidents didn't listen to me and then don't like what I said because I always dare to speak out.
But you still came back. That's good.
Who knows? Okay. Anyhow, yeah. So North Korea will definitely utilize the Russian card against China, against South Korea, against South Korea, and then also the North Korea utilize the China card against North Korea. But North Korea doesn't want to be a kind of subordinate country to the Russia and China, and then they have their own pride and confidence because Russian North Korean people are tough. They are like kind of hunters in the Asian period. You can imagine the mountains area in the north, but they always fought the Manchurians and then Chinese. South Koreans live quite in a placid, economically well settled, and that kind of environment. So when Japan was invaded South Korea at the moment, and then South Koreans were at loss how to fight. They didn't know. But when North Korean people was placed in a war, Japan was so shocked. how brutal, how they are animal like, big and tough. So North Koreans have that kind of split. So fighting are tough, crazy. So Chinese doesn't want to take, so, So China is dealing with them very carefully. Don't make them crazy much. So without international cooperation, it's extremely difficult to handle North Koreans and the North Korean nuclear radiation. We have to cooperate with each other, and then also I think we have to also provide a kind of space for the North Koreans to do as well, and together. And then without nuclear weapons, they can still survive. That's what we have to give them a kind of confidence. But South Korea alone cannot, execute that kind of policies. So this is my view, personal view, as I mentioned. Oh, okay.
I have a quick question about semiconductors, and I was wondering. First of all, you talked about, I think it's Samsung, right? What role in the global supply chain does it actually work at? Because as I understand it, like Taiwan is manufacturing, supply and development is the United States. Poland has they produce these lasers for creating the most advanced chips. So I'm just curious, what is the role of South Korea, and also how realistic is it for South Korea to start moving? You mentioned France briefly. To start exporting to different countries except China, is the way I understand. It's
no way.
There's no possibility.
No way, because there is no place for China to replace the market, because almost 60% of our semiconductors goes to the Chinese market. And so in these situations, maybe 25% to the United States. So in this kind of situations, which country can replace? India, it's a long way to go, right? Several decades, maybe we have to wait. And then Southeast Asia, we tried, but the market is still small. No country. But the problem is here, market is there, but technologies and some there are facilities are coming from the United States. They patent. So we are at the loss. But the United States president saying, don't sell the semiconductor to China. Only sell to the United States or others. And also build your firms and your companies and manufacturing facilities in the United States. But the problem is here, the Taiwan also are being asked. But United States market is only 25%. And maybe for Taiwan as well. Then we have to compete for the rest of 120% of the market for the small space. Then what's going to be the result outcome? So Samsung, maybe TSMC is a headache how to survive in this kind of environment. If you just simply follow the US request, whether can you survive? Maybe this is the exact question to the European countries as well. If you just follow the US demands, requirements, request, can you survive in the future? So this is the question I have to raise to the American strategists as well. We have to find a way how to go together if you want to fight against them, or but there is no idea yet coming, from the United States, from the other countries. So that's why I asked in my European countries, we have to communicate, we have to talk more, we have to find a way how to cooperate, collaborate. Without your help, it's impossible. We have to see the worst scenario maybe, facing in the future. So. Did I answer to your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a few questions from online,
Sure.
the online audience. The first one is, during your talk, you brought up both the Belt and Road Initiative and B3W, Build Back Better. Some China scholars like to bash B3W for being nothing but empty rhetoric. How do you see the two? And how do you see any chance of cooperation between the United States and China for the benefit of the global South specifically?
This is a very good question, and then I basically agree with the audience. And if you look carefully, how much money the United States invest, it's a kind of piece of cake compared to the amount of China utilizing in the world. So it's impossible for the United States to have an influence over the rest of the world with that amount of money. So United States definitely need a kind of help from Japan and Australia and South Korea, maybe European countries. But, every country is selfish. Even one thing, there's so much money and then, for the, benefits, which is not, expected to pay sooner or later. And also the deficit of confidence between the United States and also and the other countries, seriously. So you have to fill the gap. This is what the United States strategists must do. Okay, right. And this is the problems. Even though the United States kind of shows, as I mentioned, the Oriental style of, the strategists, chess strategies, but you need substance. But in terms of substance, the United States still suffer, lacking of substance. So still, it's a long way to go. And then, but as I mentioned, the problem is the domestic politics, the orientation of domestic politics and its influence to the foreign policies. It's not necessarily optimistic. So that's why I came here to talk, to learn, to communicate with you.
Okay. The next question is, kind of builds up on the whole discussion about Japan. How is Japan a factor in South Korea's foreign policy? What kind of influence, if any, does it have in Seoul's calculations towards Beijing?
Okay. There's no friends and enemies forever. This is a kind of axiom of international relations, right? And so if you face a formidable enemies in front of you, you have to ally with the other, okay, to make kind of to have balance. This is a kind of wisdom we learned. And also the Japan shared the kind of market system and also liberal, democratic, political system. So we are familiar with. And also a rule-based system they favor, and then we favor as a trading country. But the problem is, as I mentioned, the history issues. And so, but the South Korean conservatives really try to improve the relationship with Japan because they are afraid of Chinese approach. But Japanese strategic vision and calculation became changed. In the past, the major threat of Japan came from the north. That means through the Korean Peninsula, means China. So Japan placed its importance in its foreign policies on the Korean Peninsula as a kind of top priority. But nowadays, South Koreans are good at grabbing their legs. Continue to criticize their handling history issues and comfort of women issues, sex labor issues. It's really denouncing Japanese space, such a wonderful civilized countries, right? And powerful, and they contribute a lot to the world as well. But it's a kind of thorny, But now the other issue is the threat against Japan came from not only from the north, but everywhere in the Pacific. So it means the strategic value of South Korea became much lower than before. So, and also the Japan read carefully US changing strategies. Maybe the United States needs Japan more than before. maybe United States try to realign their supply chains, which possibly excluding Taiwan and South Korea. Anyway, Japan is going to be the cornerstone for the U.S. foreign policies to deter China from, approaching to the Pacific Ocean. So all these kind of calculations, Japan is trying to give South Koreans kind of important lesson. Listen to me. Listen to me. And don't bother us. Okay. And this is the situation. Yoon Suk-yeol government is really working hard to improve the relationship, but Japan never moved forward. And just asking South Korea succumb to. But what I am afraid is Yoon Suk-yeol government still, in spite of that kind of difficulties, still try to improve the relationship with Japan because they fear kind of imminent threat from China. This is their perceptions. And but the problem is domestic politics in Korea. Maybe Yoon Suk-yeol government, if he's going to visit Japan in this May and then this March, I guess. But the problem is if Yoon Suk-yeol government still agreed with Japan on this matter in terms of Japan's favor, and then he's going to face tremendous trouble in Korean domestic politics. Maybe he might be paralyzed for the rest of his, government term. So this is what I'm afraid. It became chaotic in Korea because still the voices of being sacrificed people from the Japanese imperial, still alive, and the emotion in Korean politics. So it is extremely difficult to, have a compromise and then also find a way out. That's the situation we face, and we are working hard to improve the relationship. But Japan's calculations are different, changed, so they are stubborn. Maybe smart.
There's the last question. How long could South Korea keep calm in the midst of North Korea's constant nuclear rattling and displaying its nuclear might in the region? Obviously, North Korea is the terrible child of China who is behind the buildup of its nuclear capability.
North Korean nuclear weapon is, of course, against the United States. This is what they, announced as a proposal. And but now those Korea changed their, nuclear strategies, preemptive strike allowed, and also threatening the, South Korea. But there is a hidden agenda as well. North Korea threatened China as well, because in the, secret meeting, North Koreans sometimes, if they're angry with Chinese behaviors, attitude, and then my Chinese friends saying, the North Korean, say, Beijing is much closer than Vladivostok and Tokyo. If you shoot them in certain or nuclear, much better than you anticipate, and than any other countries. So this is a kind of a split, So North Korea never allow China the space to maneuver in North Korea, and this is their strong nationalist. So their nuclear weapon is not necessary to be a kind of in favor of the Chinese, the national interest. So China is also there opposed to North Korea policy, but no way, because in the era of US-China strategic competition, their strategic, importance is much, getting better, getting higher, right? And the North Korea actually knew where they are, and they utilize the kind of moment. So there's no country who which deter the North Korea's behavior toward it. So North Korea has free hands, and that caused tremendous trouble in South Korea's security. So even South Korean president once announced we are going to possess the nuclear weapons in the future. And also according to a recent poll in South Korea, 76% of South Korean people support our nuclear predictions, developing our capabilities. According to the kind of source, we also are capable of developing nuclear weapons. And actually, South Korea is quite, annoying to the United States. Sometimes they themselves develop nuclear weapons, bothering them so much. And recently, also there is a small experimental nuclear test by South Korea. So the United States is a lot for South Korea to develop a kind of nuclear weapons because United States is afraid nuclear Korea or nuclear South Korea may be aligned with China, causing much more trouble to Japan and the United States because Koreans are difficult to handle. So this is a kind of operation maybe at the heart of most United States. And then the second one is the NPT system. Still, this is a kind of bulwark for the US to have influence over the world. Maybe there are other 5 standing committee members. So still they don't want to destroy the kind of system, which is quite helpful and useful in putting their influence over the international societies. So we are going to face tremendous pressure and challenges from the United States if we make decisions to go nuclear. But still, there is a growing concern for us if the United States is losing a kind of influence in the, or they are retreating from the Northeast Asia, or we have to go, nuclear. So my Japanese, friends always ask me when you're going to go nuclear. So my answer was simple: after you. But both are ready in terms of technologies and capabilities, but because of other calculations, we want for time. Okay.
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 Are there any more questions? No? Well, then we will wrap up. Thank you for the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much.